to the Be My Guest podcast, where we interview inspiring entrepreneurs who share their stories and their insights and much, much more. You made a great choice tuning in today to the Be My Guest podcast. Welcome and enjoy the show. Hey guys, this is Frankie, your host for Be My Guest podcast. We have another great episode today on the Be My Guest podcast with another great entrepreneur, and we're excited to share this interview with you. Before we do, don't forget, if you want to be interviewed on the Be My Guest podcast, go to BeMyGuestPodcast.com. That's BeMyGuestPodcast.com. Click on Get Interviewed, and we will be able to reach out to you and talk to you about being interviewed right here on the Be My Guest podcast. Without further ado, I want to bring our next guest up, Steve Warmer. Thank you, Steve, for joining us on the Be My Guest podcast today.
Frankie, awesome to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man. Listen, let's start off with you introducing yourself, telling everybody who you are, what you do, and how you got started doing what you do.
Yeah, man. So I live in Memphis, Tennessee. Been here about 5 years with my wife and 3 awesome kids. Wrote my first book a couple of years ago, and really been trying to grow into the entrepreneur space since that time, and got some really exciting things coming up, especially right around between now and the new year. Love to elaborate on that as we go. So yeah, exciting times.
Awesome. So the book that you mentioned, we were talking in the pre-interview, is that the same book you're talking about, the co-authoring book that you're coming out any day now?
Yeah, I wrote my first book 2 years ago, but the one that you're inquiring about now is called The Change, Insights to Self-Empowerment. And it's a self-author project. There's 20 of us that contributed a chapter to it.
So love to know new things. Tell me about the first book you wrote.
It's called Rivers of Hope. And it's basically a public thank you to my Lord for the miracles he's done in my life. Got some pretty amazing stories about how my wife and I had several years of infertility, several years on an adoption journey with what they would call failed adoptions. And then as we got into our early 40s, our adoption agency actually parted ways with us. And we ended up getting 3 children all at one time, just kind of snap of a finger. The Lord provided. So that's a big part of that book.
Awesome, man. Hey, listen, I'm still working on my first book. Been doing that for the last 5 years. So congratulations that you got one out. I'm looking to do my first one still. And it looks like you're on your second one.
It's in there, Frankie.
Yeah, I know. I just got to make the time and put it on paper. So you're working on the second book, and actually you're finished, and you're just waiting for it to be released any day. It's called The Change, Insights to, I believe, Self-Empowerment. That's how it's subtitled? Yep. Awesome. And you mentioned that there's a great Ford author on here that everybody should know. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was one of the things that really intrigued me, was when I learned that Les Brown, motivational speaker that a lot of people know, he contributes the forward. This is if we didn't say it already, this is a series of books, and this is number 22 that I'm a part of. And I believe, if I've got this correct, this is the last year that Les Brown will do the forward. I think he's moved on to some other projects, but super cool that he's in that.
Yeah. I love Les Brown. I love his story about when he was coming up, he was so broke that when he walked by the bank, he would trip. He'd say that. So it's pretty funny stuff. So Steve, you were mentioning, and you know, nothing wrong with this, but you're mentioning you're a newer up and coming entrepreneur. Let's park right there for a minute. What were you doing, or what have you been doing? And that up until this decision to become a newer entrepreneur and kind of take a leap into this world, what you've been doing leading up to it, and what made you decide this was the time to do that?
Well, I'm still wearing some hats. It's many hats. I'm a church pastor. I'm still currently doing that. Grateful to do that. I'm also an executive director of a nonprofit, which you and I didn't even talk about backstage. But so I wear those hats, and then trying to launch my entrepreneur business as well. So it's definitely not a slow time.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So what's some of the driving factors behind really kind of stepping out and doing more of the entrepreneur type world, if you will?
A lot of it is that there's all of us have been gifted with special skills, and there's a wider audience out there I want to speak to about some
Mhm.
things that I've learned. I want to help more people. I can do that virtually and in person with some of the offers that I'll have coming out very very soon. So yeah, I think it was just wanting to help more people and use a wider platform to be able to do that was the primary reason.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question, and it's definitely going to be an interesting conversation. Didn't even know what you just told me, but what do you think, where you think there was, do you think entrepreneurship should be discussed or even brought up in the local church?
Um, Tell me what you mean by brought up, like just a general conversation?
Yeah, like in, I'll just tell you my opinion. My opinion is that local church should be a little bit more taking part in helping God's people learn how to create money and do the things that they are gifted with. And I feel like sometimes all we do is ask for the money and that instead of helping people make more money. And
Mm,
so I've always had that thought, hey, if we could build churches that actually did that, it would help the church as well as the people. And because the Bible I read has over 2,400 scriptures about finances and only 500 about prayer. It doesn't mean prayer is any less significant. It just means finance is a very, very important subject because it's talked about a lot, right? Yet the only time you really hear it in most churches is when someone's asking for an offering or tithe, which I believe in both those things. But I think at the end of the day, if churches would maybe have a segment of their ministry helping people start a business or helping people learn how to be a ministry and in the marketplace, it would actually benefit the church as well as the congregation as well as the community. But I don't see that as much. There's some places obviously that do that. What's your take on that?
yeah, right. It's a fascinating conversation. I think it depends on the culture of the local church you're a part of. I would say in the big C with air quotes, the big Christian church, I think there's a lot of room for growth and maturity in what you just said. I think there's probably some, and I think they're rare, that probably thrive in that area. I personally
Mhm.
don't know them, but I've heard stories of them. I was just having this conversation. I think this is a branch of what we're talking about. I was just having this conversation with my wife last night. It's like, part of the reason I'm doing this also is to get us in a better position financially so that you're not just reactively giving. I mean, okay, we've had a lot of disasters here in the US in the last, 6 weeks,
Right.
and it's great to be able to give to them. But what if you're in a position to give proactively to those causes that align with your heart and be able to do that on a monthly basis because God's blessed you with the finances to be able to do so? So I
Right.
think there is definitely a lot of room for growth in the church for that, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, that's cool. A lot of people, especially Christians, I just actually created a Christian community on School, SKOOL, called Kingdom Business Builders, because I'm a big believer that those who are called to entrepreneurship, at least in their occupation, are called to impact the kingdom with finances, resources, talent, those type of things to, help expand and advance the gospel. And that's just my personal belief, and I think there's a lot of people that would agree with that. And so, what I try to do is help entrepreneurs, Christian entrepreneurs who build their businesses online, etc. And we'll use the scripture, and I want to know your take on it. You told me you were a pastor, so it kind of opened up a whole new thing. So, uh, a lot of people use the scripture Deuteronomy 8:18, where Moses said that God has given us the power to create wealth to fulfill His covenant. They use that as a placeholder, as like, hey, He's created us to create wealth. It doesn't necessarily mean He's going to rain down money from heaven to earth, but He's already given us what we need to do to create opportunities. Now, obviously, you got to do the right thing. Jesus said, "Where your heart is, your heart and the treasure. That's where your heart is." So you got to do the right thing with it. But if you're doing it for the cause of the covenant, which that's what Moses was telling the people at the time, what's your take on that? I'm tapping into the pastor part, and then we'll get into the entrepreneur part.
No, I love that you quoted Deuteronomy. I'll go with Timothy for just a second, because I think people get confused on this money topic. God never said not to pursue money. And I think the reason he doesn't say it is because of what I just said earlier, because kingdom people with a heart of God can be put in the position to help more and more people.
Right.
However, he through Timothy, he said, don't love money. Don't become a lover of money.
Yeah.
There's a difference. And so
Right.
I think we need to learn to differentiate in the church, because I think the church, as well as they know scripture, I think that one they misconstrue for sure.
Yeah. So a lot of people even forget to use the word the love of money. They just said money,
Mhm.
which
Exactly.
definitely money can be used for good and evil. But if your
Mhm.
heart is right, because in our community, I have a heart school. If your heart is corrupt, nothing in your life will really be very productive, right? If you don't have a good heart for the Lord, you don't have heart for his people, it doesn't matter how much money you make. You're never going to really go where you need to go and be productive, as because to me, it's like we should be, we should be depleting hell and populating heaven. At least that's what I read. We all have the ministry of reconciliation to help others know who God is, his gospel, his gift that he's given all of us. And sometimes that takes resources to do that in a major way, right? Or to expand that, right? So like, for example, your church, I'm sure you guys are praying church. I'm sure you guys believe in prayer, but as much as you pray, the electricity still has to be paid by money.
Right. That's right.
Right. So
Yeah, I'll share one thing about that. And we're a small church, but a powerful church in that, well, several ways, but we are now a church of 50-55, serving 1,000 families a month with our food and clothing pantry.
oh wow,
And we just started it like 15 months ago. So it's remarkable what the Lord has done with that. And so I know we want to transition here, but scripture says, bring the kingdom of heaven here by
right,
the example we live. So treating the least of these here on earth like God would, I read that in Matthew 25 and in other places. And so that's one example of how we're doing that as a church. We're
right,
certainly, like any church, we're not perfect, have lots of room to grow, but that's a strength of ours, is
yeah.
helping the least of these.
And I think it also goes back to one of the parables Jesus talked about, the five, or the talents, right? So
Mhm.
what you do with what God gives you resource wise is important. It's very important. So anyways, we'll transition from that to a little bit more entrepreneurship. Sorry, you kind of opened up the door there, so I had to go there.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So you mentioned one of the reasons, to kind of stay on the topic a little bit still, there's a lot of ministers out there who are working, and I know this personally. Your phone is always on. You're on the clock all the time. Just for those who don't know this, if you're a pastor, there's no clocking out time, right? Because people may be in a hospital, people have a dire need. It's not just preaching on Sundays in the pulpit, it's actually helping people in between services as well. And a lot of times, let's just tell the truth, most churches, um, most churches may not be able to afford to even pay someone full time, much less a decent salary. So pastors are in a pinch most of the time, right? And so there's a lot of pastors out there that need to supplement their income and do other things. And so entrepreneurship usually is a skill they probably have some skills of, being that they can lead a church and speak to people, communication, and that kind of stuff. Is that some of the reasons why, I think you mentioned it, but some of the reasons why you decided, hey, I need to do some entrepreneurship as well?
I think that's definitely a reason.
Yeah.
It's, let's just be honest, without going down the political road at all, it's 2024. Prices have gone up. They have, since COVID, and I've got 3 teenagers to feed. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely need to grind and hustle just to put food on the table. And yeah, entrepreneurship is, I've got some natural skill sets that translate over to that side for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, yep, you're right on the money on that. There's a I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Didn't think I was going to plug anybody, but there's actually a ministry called Entree Pastors
Mm,
that were formed by two pastors to this very conversation. Like, pastors don't have to be poor. They don't have to be just getting by.
right.
We need to move on from that thinking.
Entree pastors, like entree, the food entree.
I like entrepreneur, entree, and then
Entrepreneur. Okay.
pastors. Yeah,
I
yeah,
got you. Got you. I love that. I'll have to look that up.
yeah. They're awesome.
Yeah. Because, in our community, we already get it. And I hope you can join us too. It's free community. We get pastors that are trying to supplement their income and try to do what they're called to do at the same time, feed their families and take care of things. So going into the entrepreneur field, what is one of the things you're hoping to accomplish with the services and the products that you're offering?
Um, I definitely want to help people with some specific areas. I want to see people have their dreams fulfilled. You only get one life. I just got a call unexpectedly. What is today? Today's Friday. I think it was Wednesday, about a dear friend of mine that I used to work with, used to be my boss, 15, 20 years ago. And he passed away suddenly last Thursday. And I
Wow.
go to his I go to a social media post or page, and it's like all these RIPs and loved you and these condolences, but nobody seems to know what happened to him. Not, and of course that started to come out as the days have passed. But I'm like, he was big on live your life, chase the dream. And he just said that at the end of every conversation. And that it's always stuck with me, right? And now that I'm 55 years older, I'm in the only the good Lord knows, but I'm in the third quarter at least, maybe in the fourth. And you only get to live once. And as you get older, you see more and more people pass away. You go to more and more funerals, and I just don't like seeing people stuck where they're at. And there's a plethora of reasons why people get stuck, but sometimes it's just fear of not wanting to chase what's on your heart, and you get stuck in security and the grind, and maybe financially you're stuck there too. I just want to see people live their fullest while they're
Mm,
here, and if I can
yeah.
help in any small way to help them achieve that, that's what I want to do.
And I'm sure there's some steps to that process. Talk about a few steps that maybe they can start or even consider that you might offer to them.
Yeah, so I developed 8 steps to helping you get unstuck. It's called bridging the gap, moving from trials to breakthroughs. We
Nice.
all like the breakthrough side, right? We all love those. That was, matter of fact, that was my theme word for this year, was breakthroughs, and I've seen a couple, so I'm grateful. Um, so the first step is significant, and we hear a lot about this topic today. It's gratitude, but it's choosing gratitude. See, I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking gratitude is an emotion, and it can be, but it's more of a decision. And I
Mhm.
don't know about you, Frankie, but I'm not smart enough to think about worry and anxiety and doubt, and then have another emotion come in at the same time, like gratitude. So gratitude will push all that negative stuff out. It doesn't mean you stuff whatever may be going on. You still have to deal with it. But in that given moment, gratitude is the great equalizer, because it'll push that other stuff out. Now, it works vice versa too. If you want to choose anxiety, it'll push the gratitude right on out. But either way, it accumulates. The emotion accumulates. And gratitude is the great equalizer. And it accumulates. And you can have, and I'm not downplaying this for anybody that's going through a really, really difficult time. Matter of fact, my heart goes out to them. You can be going through the worst situation, and there's still always at least one thing to be grateful for in said situation. And if you believe it accumulates, eventually you'll find 3 or 4 things to be
Yeah,
grateful for, even in the worst situation. So that's one step.
I love that. Staying in that mindset of gratitude. And you said it's not an emotion, it's a decision. And then the byproduct of that is finding the places where you can produce something and continue to be productive instead of staying where you're at. So that's good. So is that step one, or where's that on the steps that you got there?
Yeah, it's one.
Okay.
Uh,
Give me another step. I won't reveal all your steps and give it away, but give me another step that you might talk
I'm
about.
actually going to give you one that's not in order,
Okay.
Because I think it's a fascinating topic. We have to learn to process our unprocessed emotions.
Mm,
So I'll give you an example. I don't know too many people, myself included, that don't struggle from time to time with unforgiveness.
right.
And unforgiveness is like taking a spoonful of poison every single day and expecting the person you're angry with to die.
Mm,
It's counterproductive, right? It's eating us up inside. So when you think in terms of unforgiveness, bitterness, anxiety, holding on to stuff from your past, it's got us in chains. And so we have to have some tools, and you can get them from several places. Most people get stuck because they don't know where to go get the tools. But we have to get the tools and then use the tools. It's just like I've got a lawnmower sitting in my driveway, right? But if I don't pull it out and use it, my grass still grows. So these unprocessed emotions will continue to grow and eat us up inside if we don't use tools.
yeah, that's amazing. And you're right. Unforgiveness being one of the unprocessed um, emotions and things that can really affect you and get you, like I was mentioning earlier, having a heart that's in the right heart set, if you will, right? If right posture makes a world of difference of how everything you do in your life, um, becomes better, right? So important. All right, so we got a couple steps. We squeezed a couple steps out of you there, and so what is it that you're facing right now as far as creating this business that maybe you tried and now you're finding some success and whatnot. So where are you at with launching this? You said beginning of year, I believe you're going to launch the actual course. You're doing a course and a program. Talk about more about that.
Yeah, so let me take us back a half a step because there's synergy in these two things. So the book that we talked about earlier, The Change, it's literally about to come out any day. All the co-authors, we've already got the 3D image of our covers. We know it's in publication. We're just waiting any day to get the word that it's available. So that'll come out, obviously, hopefully before Thanksgiving. And then the 60-day program, a little bit that we just talked about, the 2 steps of the 8. I'm looking to launch that at the beginning of the year. It's pretty much in place, but I don't really want to try to launch it during the holidays. So I think that's a great time to start is after the new year. So I'm super, super excited for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And who do you think? I mean, I know you're kind of in that process, still creating. Who do you think you're going to be working with the most, or who would you prefer to work with?
Yeah, I am still trying to niche down for sure, but I think to start off, people that are stuck, looking to fulfill their dreams, and like I alluded to earlier, they're in a dead end job. Maybe they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
Hmm.
Maybe they've just tabled those dreams from when they were a kid or something they wanted to do in early adulthood. Maybe they just haven't really given it a lot of thought in 20 or 30 years.
Right.
So I want to help them. I want to give them some hope. I want to point them in a direction. It's kind of like I don't think I even asked you, Frankie, what part of the country do you live in?
I'm in Tampa, Florida.
Okay, well, this next comment will not apply to you, and I'm jealous, by the way. I've always wanted to visit Tampa and I've never been. But for those in the Midwest and the Northeast will certainly understand when your car is stuck on a patch of ice or a clump of snow, the last thing you do is keep hitting the accelerator, right? Because it's just going to spin and spin and spin. You got to maybe put that thing back in park or put it in neutral, re-engage it. Maybe you have to put some cardboard under the tires. You have to start taking some steps to get some momentum. So if we're going to cross this bridge from trials, which is where you're at now, it's either a trial that you can't get past, or you don't even, you've put it in your subconscious for so long, you don't even realize it's a trial anymore. But you've got to start getting some momentum, some traction to get through to get on the bridge, to get to the other side of the bridge where the breakthrough is. So,
Right.
not trying to say people in Minnesota don't want to be in Tampa, but like in the warm weather, a lot of people go to Florida, right?
Yeah.
So we got to get on that bridge to start heading south to get some momentum.
Yeah. Especially when it gets cold in Minnesota, they want to be in Florida. And then when it gets real hot, we want to be more north. Trust me.
More north, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good stuff there as well. I'm going to post your website here as a banner. Tell the folks watching, other than going to your website, what's some of the ways that they may be able to work with you? Are you coaching people, or are you just doing the course? How does that work?
I do have coaching packages available. You can go to stevewormer.com to find me there and book a coffee chat with me. Would be great. You can find me on YouTube. Just enter my name; it'll pop right up. LinkedIn, Facebook, and then if you want to email me, you can. It's easy to remember. booknow@stevewormer.com.
booknow@stevewormer.com. Well, we're going to have you come back once the book gets out, and after the first year, after you get your business launched, and talk more about it. Maybe we can have even more conversations about the church's responsibility of helping people in entrepreneurship and how that works with pastors, etc. Steve, it's been good talking to you and having you share. Thanks for coming on today.
Appreciate you having me, Frankie. Appreciate it a lot.
You've been watching Be My Guest podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, go to BeMyGuestPodcast.com. That's BeMyGuestPodcast.com.